Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to my first video on this channel. I just want to start with a quick introduction, just to, say hello to the people that don't know me yet. So, who am I? I, started my career, working in VC startups as a CTO. I founded a bunch of companies myself. And that's just kind of what I did for 8 years. I chased after big bets. And, even though the apps that I worked on have been downloaded millions of times, and, another one made like a decent chunk of money in terms of like bootstrapper or indie hacker terms, I failed to, build something sustainable. And a bunch of them just died because we either couldn't get funding or we had to pivot to chase another bigger opportunity, let's say in the crypto space, for example. And that stuff just kind of felt me, leaving me feeling empty. And like I was working on things I don't really enjoy and things I didn't really want to work on, and it led to me just kind of burning out. And then I just kind of came across bootstrapping. I started to educate myself on the topic. For me, startup has always meant, raising funding, raising money. Like for a lot of people, it's always about, the big and fleshy things, the things that are in the news, and that used to resonate with me, but obviously, it didn't really get me anywhere. And the more I learned about bootstrapping, the more I just kind of knew that it was a better fit for me and what stage I'm in life, and I just didn't feel like going go big or bust, and I wanted to just make smaller, more reasonable bets with a decent chance of return, even though return wouldn't be as big, and they would still be big enough for me and my goals. And I always like to think about life in terms of sufficiency. So what is sufficient for me to reach as a goal in order to be happy, and I think that there's no real value for me in striving for $1 billion exit or something like that, because I think that that is maybe a game some other people want to play. I think there's different strokes for different folks, and one thing, within bootstrapping itself that I found lacking a bit is that it's quite broad. There's different people doing different things. You can do a lot of things a lot of different ways, and there's no real like consensus about like how you should be doing things and what principles you should be following. And that's when I came across, calm business or building a calm business. And I think that the principles, which I'll name in a second, they very much resonated with me, and I just kind of fell in love with the whole thing. And I think this encapsulates, from my point of view, how a company should be built and run. And the principles of a calm business are basically to prioritize profitability over funding, which is one thing that from the intro you can tell that kind of resonates with me. It's customer funded over external capital, which means you're not raising money externally. You're trying to, make the money from your customers, which is either by getting, some sort of crowdfunding, or getting, just having a paid product from the beginning, which that's, kind of what bootstrapping is, right? So I think that is interesting because with VC, you will always end up with two types of incentives, one from the investor and one from the company. And more often than not, those two don't really align. But when you raise money from your customer, that means that their incentives and yours, they will be aligned because the customer just wants your product to be the best product they can get, right? Next one is staying calm over being calm. So I think with calm business, a lot of people think that, you're like meditating all day and you're just kind of sitting around doing nothing, and that a startup kind of needs to be hectic in a way. And I think that that's a misconception in the sense that it's more about kind of being prepared for things that may or may not go wrong, and just having processes in place to handle things as they, as they happen. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that, like you're sitting around every day doing nothing. I think that's kind of like a thing that never happens, no matter what kind of company you run. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of misconceptions about the whole like, calm business idea. The next principle is documentation over constant guessing, which means that, you sit down, you write some SOPs, you document things so that you can focus on the things that matter more and that need creativity. Like the same process you've done a million times doesn't necessarily need to be creative. They might be a place where you can look for automation, and like kind of streamlining things. But first, you should always strive to document and then kind of take it from there in terms of automation, or, like outsourcing it or getting VAs on board and things like that. I think that's where it starts, and that's where you should also optimize first before, going broader. The next is automation over manual work. This is basically, from what I just said, you start with documentation, and as soon as you do the same thing, there's different processes to do this, but as soon as you do something 2, 3, 4 times and it takes a long time every time, or you do it like every day multiple times, I think that's a good candidate to look into automation. And automation just helps you take, the guesswork out, obviously, but also the human error. So even if you have documentation, there can always be someone, some factor, when I'm half asleep doing something, obviously I'll make a mistake. And that's something, that's easy to avoid with automation. But automation comes at a cost, right? So it's always like a trade-off you have to make. Iterative improvements over disruption. So that means you don't necessarily need to create something completely new. You just build on top of something that already kind of exists, but you make it better. Which, disruption is more kind of like a VC world kind of thing, because you need to go after markets that are big enough for an investor to give them, the return they're looking for. And you're just kind of averaging out the 10 other bets they take, or 20, so you need to kind of go big or go home. That's kind of where that comes from. And the last principle is sellability is more important than an IPO. And that's something, like that you see with Microacquire and things like that, that an IPO is such a long shot that you kind of need to be prepared for to go the distance. And I think that it's just human to eventually, want to do something else or start a side project or whatever. And I think that going there and going public as your own kind of option of an exit, because all the other ones are taken, like if a VC probably would rather see you die making a decent amount of money than they would see you sell your company. It depends on case by case, but I think generally your ideal return as a VC will come in the form of a big exit that might be an IPO, or that might be like a strategic acquisition down the line. But obviously IPO being the preferred kind of way of things, right? So calm business as a term, I think it's not that mainstream yet, but I'm kind of just trying to get more people to be aware of it. And I'm, not the only person that's talking about this stuff. There's, Arvid, big name in the bootstrapping community, and there's also, the Calm Fund from Tyler. And I think those guys were the ones that kind of made me aware of the whole thing. And I just want to give them a shout out, for kind of getting the ball rolling. And now to why I want to make a YouTube channel, or why, I'm posting this video. I think that I've always wanted to do this for a long time, since school and whatnot, but I always felt kind of like I don't really have anything to say, and I'm kind of like a awkward guy, like an introvert kind of person, your typical developer, I'd like to say. And the truth is, yeah, I mean, maybe it's true, maybe I don't have anything interesting to say, but I think I should, just try and give it a shot and see what people think, and kind of take it from there. And I'll just leave that up to the viewer to decide what they think about what I have to say. And for now, this is just a bet, you know, and for me, it's oftentimes about minimizing regrets, you know, so like thinking about I want to make a YouTube channel and then never executing on that. I think I would end up regretting that one way or another, and I just don't want to do that. So if I try and it doesn't work, then at least I can say, you know, I've tried. And for now, I'll keep those videos kind of lean. You know, you can see this is just like a Loom recording basically. And I just want to learn, you know. But as always, if you have ideas to improve the content, maybe make it a bit more interactive than a presentation kind of thing, or, you know, if the audio sucks, just let me know. I'll, you know, add things as we go. And I have metrics to track kind of, you know, when I want to unlock certain things, you know, getting a new microphone or investing into editing, things like that. But for now, you know, this is just an experiment for me. All right, so what's next for the channel? You know, I'm gonna share everything that I know building businesses in the 8-10 years that I've been doing this now, and, you know, also everything I'll learn along the way. And currently, my friends and me, you know, old high school friends, we're building a company and we're trying to build a vehicle that will buy and flip micro SaaS businesses. And one of those bets we're taking right now is called SwiftBrief. It's a SEO content brief generator, and we're, you know, just recently acquired it. And I'll share a lot of learnings from the journey there to improve that product and grow it and make it more reliable, and just overall the whole process of like from buying to selling a company, because I think that's very interesting, at least to me. Seems to be interesting for a lot of other people as well. But that's kind of one of the, you know, content pillars, which is built in public updates and milestones of that asset. And the second one will be case studies. So we kind of want to help other founders, you know, to improve their business, make it calmer, automate it, document it, and just overall make it more sellable. And I will offer people, you know, to offer help for free in order to make that content, which will go on this channel. So that's the second kind of pillar of content. And then the third one will just be informational and guides. So just like how to, you know, actually build a comp business. How do you find the right market for a comp business? Or how do you actually make your business more sellable? Like what's important to do and what's not important to do and when should you do it and things like that. So that's kind of like an informational guide pillar. And yeah, I would say, you know, if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, obviously I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel and stay in the loop. And I think, yeah, I'll see you next week when I teach you how you can create a calm business yourself from scratch. And that's it. Peace.